G'day folks, Mark here again. On to another one of the videos about the gun situation in Western Australia. Something that I for one would prefer not to be talking about, but I feel the responsibility of sharing and I suppose helping people wake up into the situation we're moving into. This particular one, there's as much as there's 1,000 different things that are horrendously wrong with what's coming in the way of new gun regulations. Regardless of actually, and it's far more than gun regulations we're talking about, it's the overreach by government. It's the legislation enforcers who have basically written, I shouldn't quite say that because they haven't written, they got written what suited them in the way of legislation. And that is obviously extraordinarily undemocratic and has serious issues to it. It isn't thought through in any real sense of making it work with our society. It's much more in making firearms safer by any means or make them work with our society. It's much more a case of, well, a few different bits and pieces, but largely removing all the firearms from West Australian civilians is the real goal attached to this if it becomes obvious in the details. But I suppose there is also, it is a Trojan horse to bring more digital ID into the civilian population in West Australia, and certainly that is being forced on any firearms owner. But I suppose I'll get into this one. There's thousands of things, like I said, but I'll get into this particular one. And this particular one hides under the term genuine need, a term that our firearms licensing process has been using for 30 plus years now. Something I've never really agreed with. It doesn't make much sense. I would think, you know, the logical thing in everything else in our world is you qualify and become licensed, and there can be different grades of license for things, but then you'll qualify that license and then you can use whatever that is, whether that's being a doctor, whether that's being a motorcycle driver, or having a car license or a truck license or a crane driver or a dentist or whatever it is. You are licensed and then you can do this thing. You need to still pass the bits and pieces to do it legally, and all the government things you need to do legally, but that's it. Well, firearms licensing doesn't work like that at all, actually. Yes, you become a licensed firearms owner, but you become a licensed firearms owner by having a licensed firearm, is really how it works in Western Australia. And to have a licensed firearm, you need to have a genuine need. Now, this is a rule that, like I said, I've never liked this idea, but it's something that is really done with, as most of the police side of things was, a discretionary process. What I mean by that? It means the law it said one thing, but it sort of meant another thing. What that meant was your genuine need had to be a particular thing the police accepted. So a genuine need of I'm out in the bush and I'm prospecting and I want to have self-defense, something to protect me against wild dogs or giant feral cats, or out to where I'm in the middle of the desert and I have no police or anything around me. I want to have something in the truck to be able to protect me and the people around me, and for whatever need that was. Well, no, that's not a genuine need. That's not something that was ever accepted a genuine need in Western Australia. The way a genuine need worked is you would go to a property, you'd find someone in the way of a primary producer or a farmer, and you would get a letter from them that said that yes, and they had a farm, so they needed pest control, which they do also. But then you'd get a letter from them that said, yes, he can, basically it was with his name on the thing, but basically said that I'm going to, whether that's shooting rabbits or foxes or wild dogs or pigs or goats or whatever it was, and the firearm you got it had to be, also in the genuine need, had to be accepted by the police what that genuine need was. So if you want to shoot rabbits, then a 300 Win Mag wasn't acceptable. So if you wanted to shoot rabbits, then 22 Magnums all they'd allow. If it was foxes, then a 223, and various things like that. So digging into places that the police probably don't really belong, actually, in my opinion, but that was how it worked. So that's what that prospector, that person would actually go, or that might be recreational hunting, and recreation doesn't mean something for fun, it means not professional. So you were part of the people that went into the forest and got rid of the cats and the foxes and things like that. Couldn't get a license for that, but once again you go to this primary producer, and with that genuine need, then you could have your firearm completely legally, but you'd use it for these other things. So nothing, basically the way the system worked for over 30 years. Basically fully understood in that sort of process, but like I said, discretionary. You're getting it for this, all these reasons here, but you're using for that. That's not illegal. You just can't get it for that. So a mess, and always going to be a hand grenade, but that's where we used to be. But the police have then used what's happened right now, and it wouldn't shock me if even the police minister now, or Roger Cook, the premier, or the power brokers above them, don't fully understand what this has turned into, because this legislation now has been put forward by the police, by a department in the police force that wants to disarm. They are known to want to disarm the population. What's been put into the genuine need situation, it is a tangle of things to get your new license, because they're going to convert to a new license system. You need to have a digital identity. So you need to have, whether you've got one in one form or other, you need to have one on your phone. You need to be able to have an app on your phone that does this. So full digital identity on that sort of level. And that will let you go into the portal. So portal, the cloud, the whatever you want to call it. But basically it's the police website. And in the police website, there you're going to, that's where you have your license, your bits and pieces done. That's exactly how you'll get a firearm from this point forward. If you're going to do it, you go through the portal on the computer and go through and fill all the details and all the proof and all the things you need there. So that in itself has just brought to have a firearm, you need a full digital ID. The next bit of that is to find genuine need, which I'm talking about right now. Well, a genuine need has to come from whether it's a club, that's a different thing. We're talking about the recreational hunting, so not professional hunting, pest control, all the things that 95% of firearms in Western Australia really used. I don't know if it's quite that number, maybe it's only 80%, but a lot of them are actually used for that. And a lot of them on property letters as described, and for all the various reasons they could be under the brackets of to help the primary producer. Fully legal, fully how the system went. Well, now that primary producer has to get their firearms license and put their property, so they need to be a digital identity, and they need to put their property through that system. And in there, that will tell them how many authorities they can have. Now, let's dig into this a little bit deeper. What it means is that I've been emailed and told a few times now, I have not seen more than 15 authorities for their properties, and be that a 1,000 acres or 5,000 acres or 10,000 hectares of those ones I've seen, which are decent, small to decent size properties. 15, a total of 15 authorities is what's been put down to them, and then the size of the property, really pretty much regardless of what's happening on the property, is regulating the caliber, the maximum caliber, or maximum chambering. The police call it caliber, but that's not the bore size we're actually talking about. It's actually the chambering. So what the firearm is specified in there. And I've seen down to 1,000 acres being no more than, I think it was under 1,000 acres, but it was no more than the 22 Magnum, 22 WMR. And then 1,000 acres being no more than a 223. And then there was, I think it was 5,000 acres being no more than a 3006. I haven't seen anything bigger than the 3006 from the southwest area. And there'll be some logic to it, not that much actually, but 15 authorities. Now, some people have said, oh, that's 15 shooters they can have on there. No, that's not what 15 authorities mean. 15 authorities means 15 property letters, which means 15 firearms, which from all I can interpret at this moment, means that if the farmer and the farmer's son have 15 rifles, that's all they can have. No more property letters are coming from that property. So, okay, if the farmer's only got one or two, then let's say they've got two, then there's 13 authorities, which means 13 more firearms. So if there's 3 people that have got, well, not even 5, 4 firearms each that they're trying to do there, where they've got their 22, and they've got a 22 Magnum, and they've got a 223, and they've got a 308, and they've got a shotgun. Not just for the average range of hunting sort of stuff and a little bit of plinking and practicing, that sort of stuff, then that's a moderate little range. Well, you have that property can really take a couple of those. But here's a bit beyond that point. The way this is all worked with this portal process is not only do you have to be on the portal and have your digital ID to get the firearm, but also what's supposed to happen as they set it up is that the farm will have their portal, which means that they can also log on when that firearm goes to that place to do the job that they've got their genuine need for. But you can't have that. You can't have that firearm, that portal, that system. You can't go to another property because we've just stopped that side of things. So you had a bunch of guys that would go to a property, which happens regularly forever in Western Australia, where there's a fox issue, or there's a fox hunt on trying to get, or a cat hunt on, that type of thing. You have 3 or 4 guys that go out and do that sort of stuff. Well, not anymore. No, that's been stopped. You're not going to be able to put those on that property, and they're logging exactly when you go. You have to log in then on the portal to say you're there. But it goes deeper than that, from what I understand. Where the police want to take it is the portal is also obviously at the gun shops, to where you're going to have to, when you purchase your ammunition, the amount of rounds you've purchased will be logged in there, so they know exactly where that is. And then when you're shooting at the property, the amount of rounds you've used, the range, wherever it is, the amount of rounds you used have to be logged there also. Now, this is, massive overreach. We're basically treating every firearms owner as a criminal out on bail, and you need to report everything to you. Well, even they don't go to this sort of level, but that's obviously the way this is written in some senses, largely through the brackets of just make it too hard, too invasive, and everyone will stop. That's not talking about massive expense on gun safes, which are massively overrated for what they're talking about. All the things they're talking about to try and just make it too hard. But in this situation, we control everything. But here's the other little detail that is sort of the whispers that are coming back out. Is if you have a firearm, let's say you've gone to a Northwest property, that's where you've got an authority from, and it's for camel, or it's for wherever it is, where they've allowed something, scrub balls, and you've got your 300 Win Mag, about as big as you're probably going to get in this system. Haven't seen those authorities yet, but you've got that. Unless you're using enough rounds every year, then you are proving that you don't have a genuine need. So there's another place where that isn't a genuine need because you're not using it enough, and we'll take that away. So you can see where all this is heading. This is a really nasty place, really, this is all heading. And it's about removing the firearms. The bigger detail I want to point out to you is the basic thing, as I've said, with doing everything completely legal and everything how the system worked, there are properties that will have they'll have from 50, 200 in some cases, maybe even 1,000 in some cases. There's properties that have that many authorities. Well, now they're property letters out there. And not done because they want 1,000 people shooting on their property whatsoever. No, done because in some cases there was some gun shops and things selling property letters to make it all work. Farmers that were making a little bit of money out of doing that process. And obviously farmers in places are struggling with other things, so they're doing that. But it was to fill up this gap of whether you were, as said, a recreational hunter, whether you're a plinker, you're a guy who bought your 300 Win Mag and with a couple of mates went and did some long range shooting in some paddocks somewhere, that type of thing. Not something that you can get a license for, not a genuine need anymore, but because you had a property there, you can go and do this. So harming no one, causing no issues, entertaining yourselves, looking after things, doing a good job, or for whatever those mean. The prospector out there, which is, like I said, for some personal security side of things, and basically talking about the animals and the bad animals out in the bush, being able to protect yourself, to the greenie, the person who's actually trying to get rid of the ferals in the forest, and trying to actually save the little animals, trying to do the right thing on that sort of level. Nothing could you get a license for you could on a property. So done with that, down to just the collector who wants to be able to use his firearm. Yes, in Western Australia, we have what's called a collector's license, but you're not allowed to shoot the rifle. So if you wanted to actually collect something that you could also use, you'd go and get a property letter. Well, most of those property letters are gone. Those farms that have done the right thing and helped out and helped our system work in the way it was designed, well, they're no longer allowed to. They may have, like I said, they might have up to 1,000. Well, 15 is what the police have just said they're allowed. So literally 985 firearms have no longer a genuine need in this system. So the people who are sitting there quietly thinking that, okay, well, I'm just going to wait and see what happens, and I've got my property letters and that sort of stuff there, so I've done everything legal. No, as we go through this period, as your license comes up for expiry over the next 3 to 4 to 6 months, and some will be up to 11 months because they paid for their licenses at the beginning of this year. As you go through this process, what's actually going to happen is that the property letter has gone. And you'll get the letters to say, and I haven't seen that process either, but you need to go and get a property letter. You need to do this, to make it all happen. And literally, well, in those sort of numbers there, we've got in the over 90% at least of the property letters have just evaporated by the way they've written this. Once again, I'll come back to that discretionary thing. A law that was made work in a fashion that did work. Didn't cause any issues. No safety issues. No one doing anything illegal. Although it wasn't specifically the same it was written, it was done in a discretionary process where this is fine to do it that way. This is what the police wanted as well. This is how the whole system worked. Now they've taken that and turned it right back into tighten up the noose and turn it into nothing but this. A little bit like our speed limits, set up to where 110 Ks, but now 111 Ks and we're going to fine you. This absurd overreach of, in this case, the legislation enforcers, which has turned into a place where I suppose I'd end up with, and I'd come back to, there's a lot of other details. First of all, I should say there's a lot of other details. The transition process that's going to happen where even people who potentially could have got an authority from a property, the property is not licensed, not changed over to the new system. When you're changing over the new system, there's a mess, which I'm not certain there's a way forward with for people either. I'm pretty certain that the police will quite happily say, okay, you're illegal now, you need to hand in your firearms. But maybe the transition process, the big picture still ends up in this place. My belief is that the police minister, the powers that be, all the powers that be, actually don't know how intrusive and how invasive and how aggressive this has been written by a few people that wanted a very specific goal. All firearms removed, regardless of any other logic than that's what they want removed. And you can go into agendas and all those bits and pieces, and I say every time I bang into all those things, whether it's the 2030 agenda from the UN, whether it's the managed decline, whether it's the CCP, all those bits and pieces, all these things are really happening in our world. But I'd say all these things can be true at once. If we want to come back to where it makes sense, then you, the people in power, need to make this make sense. This is going to cause fallout. And maybe it doesn't cause enough fallout as to make it change right now. But I've got to tell you, everyone else out there, in your four-wheel drives, in your V8 cars, in your golf clubs, in your nature walks, in your whatever, you go into the level where we can also talk about social credit scores and net zero and those sorts of things. I don't want to go too much into the other world of make this conversation huge. But the moment they have to where you have to use your digital ID to get to access your money, to buy anything, to purchase anything, why on earth, even for the people who think they're doing everything wonderful, but you want to go to Bali or you want to go to Singapore once a year or you want to have a holiday, well, no, you're going to have to use that as well. And the government is moving ways into where they can say, yes, you can, or no, you can't. Maybe your social credit score isn't high enough to do that, and maybe you might need to save up and buy some more carbon neutral credits before you can do that sort of thing. bit of a segue, I know. It's not really. It's actually all the same system that's going on here. But at this moment, please, all you guys who are sitting there just waiting to see what's happening, that little thing, that genuine need thing has just been turned into a scalpel. And it's about to remove your firearm from you. And if you don't start to be involved and start to do something about it, you'll lose that firearm. And okay, you might say, I don't care. Well, that four-wheel drive, that V8 car, that overseas holiday, that everything is going to snowball into this process unless you wake up. Anyway, guys, that's this one today. It is extremely important to share, to get it onto people, to get it onto primary producers don't know about this. The likes of some of the police force don't know about this. Certainly lots of shooters don't know about this. Share what's going on. If it will get to a point where it's too late, and we don't want to get to that point. We want to turn around. We really want to make enough noise and enough awakening so that the government go, wait a minute, this is a bad move, and maybe we didn't realise exactly what those heads in the police force are doing, and maybe we got to actually turn that around, put it back where it works, work out a better plan, and maybe get those people who made those decisions and push this agenda, maybe give them a different job. Anyway, guys, that's that one. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much for checking in. We'll catch you next time.